Welcome to another edition of the BamaInsider.com podcast. It's your boy Kyle Henderson coming to you from beautiful Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Great day to be here. It's Thursday, November 16th. Next week's my birthday, man. Come on, give me some birthday love. I'm excited about it, man. This will be my first birthday in Tuscaloosa, and I want to tell you, all our fans out there and subscribers to BamaInsider.com, I'm just extremely thankful and grateful to be here. I mean, this is really a dream come true, and every day I'm walking through the Malmore complex, I just have to pinch myself. I cannot believe I am in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Really a dream job for me, so I hope we're bringing it on a daily basis for you. I hope you're getting the best coverage at BamaInsider.com, and I just thank you to our subscribers and, just really, really grateful from the bottom of my heart. With that said, we got Alabama and Mercer taking place this weekend, and Nick Saban was pretty animated on Wednesday. He was bringing the heat comedy-wise, as he sometimes does. And here's Nick Saban talking about torn jeans to open the program.
I guess I just wanted to know how we got here. Not to offend anybody out there, but I just walked by some jeans, wore-out jeans, holes in them, all cut up. I just remember when I was a kid in West Virginia, I was ashamed to go to school because my jeans were wore out, only because we didn't have any better. Now they buy them that way. I just can't figure, how did we get here? I don't know.
Saban obviously in a good mood heading into the Mercer game. Alabama ranked number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. Big test next weekend as Alabama and Auburn play. But first things first, Alabama and Mercer will take place Saturday, November 18th at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Kickoff slated for 11 a.m. at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Couple series notes, Alabama and Mercer will meet for just the third time on Saturday and the first time in 77 years. The Crimson Tide and the Bears have met just twice, with Alabama coming away with a pair of victories, both 20-0 in 1939 and 1940. Mercer is in its 5th season since reviving its program in 2013. The school previously competed in football from 1892 to 1941 before discontinuing the sport from 1942 to 2012. Alabama head coach Nick Saban is 47-6 against non-conference opponents in regular season at Alabama, including a 30-1 mark at Bryant-Denny Stadium. Mercer head coach Bobby Lamb is 32-24 in 5 seasons at Mercer and 99-64 in his 14th season. Now, big news dropped yesterday by Nick Saban during his Wednesday press conference when he mentioned that Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller are in what he calls the functional rehabilitation phase of their rehabilitation. Remember, both of the linebackers were injured in week 1 against Florida State, and some had speculated they would be out for the entire season. So here is Nick Saban talking about Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller, which would obviously be gigantic additions back to Alabama with the amount of injuries that Alabama has suffered at linebacker this season.
All I will say is Terrell Lewis and Christian Miller is in what they call the functional phase of rehab, but not really medically cleared to play. So as they go through this continued work on the field and so forth, at some point in time, I guess they'll get medically cleared. But as I've always said before, that's a medical decision that our medical staff will make when the times come when they feel like they're able to get back out there and maybe be able to play.
Now on the program with Andrew Bone, the man, the myth, the legend, bringing you Alabama insider recruiting notes. Bone, what's up, man? How you been?
I've been good, Kyle. Just just another day in the life, covering recruiting and seeing what's going to happen next. Yeah, just like all these Alabama fans, I'm pretty much waiting to see when the next commitment's going to drop and see what happens. I mean, we're sitting at 11 commitments in Alabama's recruiting class, and I remember back in June and July telling everyone not to worry, not to panic, and I'm still in that phase. Don't worry, don't panic. I know we're only a few months away from National Signing Day, and everyone's wondering where all these commitments are, but there's no need to worry. There's almost every top guy that Alabama's recruiting is still out there on the recruiting board. Guys that are not committed. There's some guys that are committed to some schools that they're hoping to flip, and I think they are going to get some flips. But the majority of guys are guys who are not committed anywhere, and Alabama feels like they're in great shape to land over the course of the next couple months.
All right, so let's start out with this. There was some big news recently with the decommitment of Jarrett Bell. Why did he back off his commitment, and what do you expect Alabama to do with the offensive line in that position?
Jarrett Bell was an interesting guy that made a trip to Tuscaloosa back in June, participated in Alabama's O-line, D-line camp. Nobody really knew a lot about him. He didn't have many offers, had some smaller offers, so to say. Didn't have the big schools out on the West Coast like USC, UCLA, those types of schools. Then he went to Alabama's camp, and he worked out as a defensive lineman throughout his junior season in high school, but then came to Alabama's camp as an offensive lineman, really performed extremely well, and earned an offer from Alabama at the camp. Now, Alabama has, from the beginning, they kind of planned on taking three offensive linemen, and they had some top targets early on. They really liked Emil Ekiyor out of Indianapolis, who ended up flipping his commitment from Michigan to Alabama. He was really kind of their top interior offensive lineman throughout the entire recruiting process. They were able to flip him, and then they ended up getting Tommy Brown, also from California, to commit during the summer. He's an Alabama legacy. His father Vince played or threw the shot put for the Crimson Tide in the early '80s. So, going ahead and having two offensive linemen, like those guys, Tommy Brown and Emil Ekiyor, didn't really leave a lot of room for some other guys that Alabama kind of considers top tier targets, like Penei Sewell, the number one player in the state of Utah, who many feel like Alabama's in the driver's seat to land. And Alabama also is very high on Nick Ferrer from Tampa, who also still is very high on Alabama's recruiting board. So, I think as the season has progressed, I think the communication started to slow down a little bit between Alabama and Jarrett Bell. He did commit in August, but I think that it was kind of an understanding that he could end up going elsewhere, and he started picking up some offers, including one from UCLA during the season. And I think just with the lack of trips to Tuscaloosa, the ability to get back and forth, just kind of difficult for him, and just decided it was best to go ahead and decommit. Now, I do not expect Alabama to continue to recruit him. I think it's kind of just a mutual parting of ways, and Alabama will be fine. As I mentioned earlier, they plan on taking three offensive linemen. They have two currently on board, and I think they will get Penei Sewell at some point over the course of the next month.
We're speaking with Andrew Bone of BamaInsider.com. You can download or subscribe to any of our podcasts on iTunes or Google Play. Just search for the BamaInsider.com podcast. Bone, Nadab Joseph continues to hint of a possible commitment to Alabama. Do you still expect him to choose the Crimson Tide?
A lot of people keep wondering why is he waiting? Why is he waiting? And I'm sort of the same way. Why is he waiting? But I definitely expect him to choose Alabama. I kind of expected. We were thinking he was going to announce before he arrived in Tuscaloosa for his official visit for the LSU game. But then we were like, well, he's not going to leave Tuscaloosa without making a decision. Decided to wait, and then we started hearing, well, he'll announce the decision sometime, during the week after his official visit. Well, also decided to wait. We're kind of hearing that could be the same situation this week. Could it drag out any longer? Maybe, but I can't see it lasting much longer. I mean, I think he's pretty much on board. Alabama loves him. Trust me, it's not any situation where Alabama's telling him to hold off at all. Alabama's always been a big fan of his. He made a couple trips to Tuscaloosa during the summer. Really impressed the coaches at camp, and he really kind of shot up the recruiting board during the summer. There were some other guys that they were recruiting that they liked, and they brought several defensive backs on campus this summer to kind of compete and kind of figure out who was that next guy outside of the top tier guys that they really liked, like Josh Jobe and Patrick Surtain and Tyson Campbell. Who was going to be that other guy that they really liked, and they already had a commitment from Jalen Armour Davis, and they had guys like Nadab Joseph, J.C. Horn, Christian Tutt, and some other guys that came on campus. I'm trying to think of Trey Dean out of Georgia, and Nadab really kind of went and got the I guess you could say he got the top spot out of that group. He was a guy that they really were impressed with. They started to push for over everybody else, and I think a few of those guys out of that group that I mentioned of the next tier guys, I think a few of those guys tried to commit to Alabama, and they asked them to hold off, and Nadab was kind of their top guy. So he's certainly one of their top 4 defensive back targets, top 5 defensive back targets in this year's class, and I expect them to sign him or at least land his commitment sometime pretty soon.
Number 1, Alabama hosts Mercer this weekend, and Alabama's going to be hosting some guys coming in. I noticed that big California quarterback Matt Corral is coming to Tuscaloosa. Who are some other guys, and can you discuss the list of visitors coming into Tuscaloosa this weekend, Bone?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting list, especially because it's an 11 a.m. kickoff against Mercer. I mean, there's not really a ton of top tier kids that usually make that trip, especially for an 11 a.m. kickoff. Doesn't really matter who you're playing. Most of Alabama's top guys ended up coming in for the LSU game, which was that prime time 7 p.m. kickoff. Alabama's going to have 3 official visitors this weekend, which is amazing in my opinion. Getting 3 guys on campus for this last weekend for official visits. You mentioned Matt Corral, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, committed to Florida. It seems like there's a lot of excitement about that visit, and I would kind of hold off from it, for now. Alabama's been trying to get Matt Corral on campus for a long time. He was supposed to visit during the spring, then was supposed to visit during the summer, and never did. Ended up committing to Florida. And obviously now with the coaching situation in Gainesville, he's not really sure what he's going to end up doing. But going to take an official visit to Alabama this weekend. We'll kind of see what happens there. But Alabama's top quarterback target is Emory Jones. They only plan to take one, and I think Alabama will wait, for Emory Jones before they take anyone else. And so he's kind of a backup plan right now. Who knows if they're going to tell him that, but I think most people understand that Emory Jones is Alabama's top quarterback target. Divide Wilson, defensive back from Miami Northwestern, plans on being on campus. Another commitment for the Gators coming in town, and sort of a situation where Alabama really likes him as a defensive back. Evaluated his senior season, and really very high on him. I mentioned on our recruiting board the other day that Alabama continues to evaluate, continues to recruit. They don't just say, okay, these are the guys that we're going to recruit as seniors, and we're not going to look at anyone else. That's just not the case. And we saw them do that a few years ago when they decided, well, we're going to offer this kid in January. His name's Eddie Jackson. We're going to offer him a few weeks before National Signing Day, and we're going to turn down this 5-star that we've been recruiting for a long time who's wanting to come here. We're going to turn him down and take Eddie Jackson instead. I think people, a lot of people probably thought at the time that was just crazy. Well, we see how Eddie Jackson's career has unfolded, and so I would always trust Alabama, especially when it comes to recruiting defensive backs, because they are, they're definitely one of the best in the business when it comes to evaluation and recruiting elite defensive back targets. So we'll keep an eye on Divide Wilson. I think they want to kind of size him up, kind of look him eye to eye, get a taste of what he's like off the field. They know what he can do off the field on the field in terms of his play. They've been able to evaluate him So they'll get a better understanding of what kind of guy he is off the field this weekend, and then decide, do we want to go ahead and make a push for him? Because Alabama wants to sign 4 to 5 defensive backs in this year's class. They have one on board in Jalen Armour Davis. We expect Savion Smith and Nadiv Joseph to get on board, so that would make 3 defensive back commitments. They're still looking for 1 or 2 more guys. So, he's certainly a guy that they'll consider. The third official visitor, Daniel Falale. He's a monster defensive lineman from IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. 6'9", 380 freaking pounds. I mean, this kid is an absolute monster. Alabama likes him. I mean, he's got a lot of size. He obviously cannot teach size at all. And he's very athletic for his size too. And he's still kind of a raw kid, but from what I've been told, Alabama's been trying to get him on campus for a long time. They've always liked him, and he's certainly a guy that they would consider taking. Just because you could put him in a few different positions, especially on the offensive or defensive line. So he's someone to kind of keep an eye on. Right now, it looks like Georgia's probably the favorite for him, but he's never been to Tuscaloosa before, so getting him on campus this weekend is going to be big. We'll see if Alabama's able to do anything there with him.
Bone, I wanted to ask you about Quay Walker and Vernon Jackson. I noticed in a recent report on the message boards, you hit on those guys. If you could elaborate a little bit more on their situation, if you expect those 2 guys to stick with Alabama.
Well, I think with all the guys who are committed to Alabama right now, those guys are probably on the shakiest ground in terms of sticking. They're taking their official visits. They're enjoying the recruiting process. But ever since Vernon Jackson committed to Alabama, he's taking trips to Texas A&M. He was at Texas this past weekend. So Texas schools are trying to keep him at home. Quay Walker has been committed to Alabama since the summer. Committed to Alabama in June, and since then has really kind of I guess gone to a lot of different places, and he's named a top 5. He said he's going to take all 5 of his official visits. A lot of people kind of are thinking he's going to flip, but he really hasn't. Other than that, he really hasn't given Alabama any indication that he's going anywhere else. He's acted like he's solid with them throughout the whole process. He's made it to Tuscaloosa 3 times for games this season. Was also at the Alabama-Florida State game. So he's watched Alabama play 4 times this year. We'll see what happens. I think Alabama, regardless, is going to be fine at the linebacker position, because I think over the course of the next couple of months, they're going to end up landing J.J. Peterson and Brandon Cahoe, 2 elite linebacker prospects. Could give Alabama 5 linebackers overall. If Alabama ends up losing Walker or Jackson, they'll end up signing 4. I think they're fine either way, 4 or 5 guys. They're not trying to push one guy out. They want to keep all these guys intact. So we'll see what happens. But I would probably, I don't know. It's tough to say because Walker's been committed for such a long time. Jackson just committed to Alabama last month. So you would think that with him making a decision so late in the process, he's not going to flip. But you just never know with some of these guys. You don't know if these guys end up deciding, I want to stay a little bit closer to home, especially with Jackson being out in Texas and all the Texas schools really coming after him. So we'll see what happens. But as of right now, both remain committed to Alabama.
Wanted to close the program by highlighting the Alabama basketball team. On Tuesday, they defeated Lipscomb by a score of 86-64 to move to 2-0 on the season after beating Memphis in the previous week. And I was really impressed with this basketball team. And I was kind of taken back by the lack of fans at Coleman. I think if you're around the area on Friday as they take on Alabama A&M, you should definitely make your way to Coleman Coliseum to check these guys out. They're the real deal. I mean, it's just not hype. People just aren't, giving these guys early season praise. I mean, they're going to be the real deal, and I can't wait to see what they do moving forward. I think they got a great shot to run the table in the month of November. Couple stats from the game. I know everyone's excited about true freshman Colin Sexton. He had his first showing at Alabama, 7 for 10 from the field, 3 for 5 from beyond the arc, finished with 22 total points in 27 minutes of play. Thought he did a great job. Free throws need to improve. Only 5 for 12 from the line. Alabama really struggled as a team from the line, shooting a dismal 37%. Obviously, I think that will improve. Last year, I know they couldn't hit free throws either, but it's the early season, so let's kind of look at a larger picture before we judge their free throw shooting, and we'll kind of go from there. But overall, I thought they did a great job, and the rotation in the lineups that this team can put on the floor is really impressive. A lot of guys played. Total bench points, they had 24. In the paint, they had 50 points. So really getting the ball inside. And that was, I really like to play at Dante Hall. Finished with 10 points, 5 for 7 from the field. And then Daniel Giddings, another big man, didn't have a good night from the field. Only 1 for 2, and then from the free throw line, he was 1 for 7, finished with a total of 3 points. But I think what he brings to the table is going to be good for this Alabama team. Another true freshman, John Petty, 6 for 11 from the field, played 33 minutes, which was the most on the team, finished with 14 total points. He had a slow start in the first half, but really heated up in the second half, and I think people are going to be really surprised about his ability. I think he's going to be a superstar here at Alabama. Dazon Ingram, good night from the field, 6 for 8, finished with 13 points, played in 27 minutes. And who else can we highlight? How about Herbert Jones? I think he's a guy that people are going to be really surprised about too. Finished with 6 points. Avery Johnson Jr., 9 points. Most of those came in the first half. I think all of them came in the first half, actually. And we saw signs of Galen Smith, who's a new guy here at Alabama, finished with 5 points. Also had 4 total rebounds. And then Alex Reese, another guy who's a freshman, finished with 9 total rebounds. I think that was kind of something that, is very promising for Alabama. I think we'll speak with him on Thursday here in Tuscaloosa. Alabama, again, will take on Alabama A&M Friday night, try to move to 3-0. Here's what Avery Johnson had to say, a couple takeaways from Johnson following Lipscomb.
But overall, I'm proud of our team. Much better effort in the second half. We made some shots. Obviously, you guys know, we left a lot of points on the board at the line, but they're all correctable. But overall, I'm proud of our guys.
Like you said, second half, 11 assists, 18 made baskets, player movement, ball movement better. The guys just said, you said quit playing cool, kind of go into what you.
Did they say that?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Wow, that's a sign of maturity. They're telling the truth. Good. Wow. Yes, that's something we talked about. A little too casual, cool in the first half. But whether it's jitters or a lot of those guys are young and this was their first game in the building, or just getting back in the flow of things for some of the guys that have been here before in the program. We started 3 guys tonight in Daniel Giddings, Petty, and Colin that had never played a regular season game in the building. So I know because they're supposed to be some diaper dandy or super freshmen, they're supposed to be invincible in some people's eyes, but they're still human, and they have to grow and develop and gain experience, and same thing with Daniel. And then we're bringing a couple of freshmen off the bench. So I just think there were some nerves there and some jitters, but we're glad we got this game behind us.
Could you assess Colin's play, and just how do you think he came out and kind of handled his emotions tonight in his first college game?
I think he's been a champ in terms of his courage and character, and mainly commitment to the program. You learn a lot about people in adversity. Wow. I mean, you learn so much about where you stand in a relationship with somebody when there is adversity. Okay? You really do find out. And he and I and the rest of his teammates, they sincerely love him, and he sincerely loved them. And we laugh together, cry together. We're emotional at times together, but it's all about teamwork and togetherness. So I think obviously, He didn't shoot it as well. He's capable of making 11 out of 12 and 12 out of 12 from the free throw line. I will not lose any sleep over his free throws. Okay, but I think he's had a lot on his plate. But let's give his teammates credit also from going through whatever he's gone through with him and the way they've supported each other.
Well, that's going to do it on the BamaInsider.com podcast. Hope you had a great listen. You can catch us back on BamaInsider.com. All our coverage nonstop, bringing it to you on the Alabama football and basketball front. My name is Kyle Henderson, along with Andrew Bone and Tony Sakalis. We make up the BamaInsider.com team. You can subscribe on the website, become a premium member, subscribe, get into those message boards, become a part of the biggest Alabama community on the internet. You can catch us Friday night as we continue to bring you coverage of Alabama basketball as they take on Alabama A&M. And then Tony Sakalis and I will be in Tuscaloosa, as we always are, to cover Alabama and Mercer on Saturday at 11 a.m. Hope you have a great rest of your week and see you back on BamaInsider.com. From Tuscaloosa, Alabama, this is the BamaInsider.com podcast.